All right, so good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. That I really want to show anything here. Okay. So we have a lot to get to tonight. Maybe we'll be able to keep the remarks brief, discussions even more brief. So let's have the action on the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes?
Yes,
Agenda.
it's going to be. What?
I can't. Who's that talking?
This is Phil.
Okay, Phil.
So just a minor change that Mario and I are swapping roles. So it would be I'll report on the stormwater, and I can also report on the archives.
All right. Is that okay with you, Mario?
Yes, Khaki, that's fine. Yes, we agree to it.
Yep. And so you probably, unless you want to chime in on other parts, I don't see an update for you. Okay.
Okay.
For tonight. Okay. With that change, is anybody else got any changes, or can we move ahead to approve this agenda? Sounds like it. Can approve it. So everybody in favor? Can raise your hand. Well, Phil can't. He's not on video. Okay.
Aye.
So,
Aye.
okay. Good. Here we go. Okay. Great. Now we have approval of minutes for the January 11th, 2021 Town Council meeting minutes. And do we have any changes? Or are they good?
I think we had a couple changes, Khaki. The first one is really simple, just under call to order. I would change that so it's more consistent with how the other minutes are. A resident pointed this out. So it would be Mayor Khaki called the meeting to order at 7:37 p.m. Present on the call were council members, and then listing all of you. And then also on the call were interim town manager, or also on the call was interim town manager Debbie Sandlin.
And okay. Elizabeth was she on?
She was not.
Okay, we also usually include whether or not the reporter for the Bugle is on.
Okay, I can check with Ed and ask him if he was.
Probably can look at the January Bugle and see. If he was there, he'll write about it. Right? All right. Let's see. Was there any other? Let's see.
You had another one. Do you have it, or do you want me to say it, Khaki?
I'm looking for it. Is it
Okay.
about? Oh, shoot, it was about the action item, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So did we modify something? I'm looking for it.
You did. It was in the second to last sentence. Would now read: Councilmember Schultz motion to approve the adoption of the ordinance as amended to correct the ordinance title.
Right, and that is true, is it not, Bill? That was what we had motioned to approve with change. So it's not as amended, I think, everybody. That phrase is being, that's what's being corrected here, because changes were already approved when you all voted for the introduction of the that was already done in December. So then you were all adopting this for land use in January, but Phil made the motion with a change, which was really specifically to the title, because we had the wrong title. Sort of a technical correction, but I don't care. I don't think we needed it, but it's fine. That's what would be the change. We would strike out at the meeting, at the December meeting, as amended at the December meeting. Just put in what Andrea said. Okay. Is that for everybody? Okay. Is there any other change? Okay. Would you all like to make So would you all like to prove this with that one change in minutes? Is
Yes.
there everybody, your eyes from everybody?
Yeah.
I can see Dan, Barry Lee, and Mario. So good. I see this. See the thumbs up. Dan, how did you do that? That's pretty cool. All right. And Phil, are you good with the change wherever you are?
Yep. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Approved with that slight change. Okay. Do we have any presentations by residents? And I'm going to mark the time right now. It is 7:37. Do we have anybody on the call that wants to make a presentation?
Yes, this is
Okay.
Eileen Kelly. I do.
All right, Eileen, go ahead.
Hi,
I
this
can
is
bet
Eileen.
what it's going to be about, but go ahead.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be about the pond, Kaki, as I'm sure you're aware. So this is Eileen Kelly. I'm here with my husband, Sanjay Pahuja.
Eileen, give us your address, okay?
The town council on where we stand. We had spoken 2 months ago in the town council meeting regarding some ponding that was created as a result of the creation of the much beloved sidewalk, which we are very thrilled with, but the ponding is not so great. At that meeting 2 months ago, it was
Hey,
decided that
Can I bring you up to date on that? Because we already know what
I'm going to go ahead and finish. This is a resident presentation, so I'm just going to go ahead and finish. So at that meeting 2 months ago, we brought up the fact that this ponding was there, and we were told that something would be done, and that a letter describing what would be done would go ahead and be sent to us. I just wanted to update everyone that we have not received that letter and nothing has been done. I did email Kaki about a month ago and heard back that she was going to discuss with town folks whether it would needed to be handled in town or subcontracted out. But we don't have an update beyond that. So it's been about a month since we've heard anything. So I just thought that it was good to update everybody. And of course, Kaki, I'm very anxious to hear anything you have to say. I just wanted to go ahead and finish what I had to say first. Thank you.
Okay, Eileen, you're at what address, please? We should always record that.
11002 Kenilworth Avenue.
And you know, I think I'll just save it for my update with SRTS. There isn't much to say about SRTS, but I'll adjust that. And we do have some info, but probably it doesn't get to where you are right now, but I got some updates for you on that. Okay, anybody else? Okay, we have some action items, quite a few. So the first one, which is easy, is the appointment of election judges. This is for 2-year terms, and the folks that had served last year are willing to serve again. And that would be John Shirkey, Jenny Krenek, and Louise Tomasky. So I would like to appoint them with your approval, Council.
So this is Phil. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Do you, Andrea, think we need actually a motion, or can I just do a unanimous or none?
I think it says the language is pretty vague. I think it just says the mayor appoints with council approval. So I'm not sure. It doesn't hurt to just do a vote real quick to be done with it.
It's sort of like
Okay.
appointing members committees, and we don't really take a motion, we just get a or not. So why don't we do that?
Okay.
Kathy, could you just quickly, this is Jerry Lee, could you just quickly state what streets each of the residents who you're not nominating, appointing?
Yeah, I don't know the streets. We
Okay,
can put it in later. These are the same people who served last year.
okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
is everybody, are you all okay with that?
Kaki, can I just make a clarifying point? Are you appointing them for a 2-year term, a new 2-year term?
Yeah, it is
Okay.
a new year term, 2 years.
Okay.
Do you want a motion or no?
No, I just need to know if you're all okay. I see a thumbs up from Dan. How about Mario and
Fine.
I concur.
Okay, and Phil?
Yep, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So that action is approved. Okay, we have the introduction of the ordinance for the mid-year budget adjustment. Now, Andrea, is this the order you want to go? You want to do the mid-year first? I just, we didn't change anything, but I'm
Yeah,
just asking for your
that's fine.
courtesy.
It doesn't really matter to me. That's fine though.
All right, so I'm gonna just punt it over to you, okay?
Sure. So this is the mid-year budget adjustment. So the FY21 budget was adopted in May, and this is to make adjustments mid-year as we traditionally do. In this case, the primary focus is to reallocate the carryover and then address where line items where we either overestimated revenue or overspent or likely to overspend on expenses, either operations or capital. I would consider this sort of budget adjustment light. We didn't do a thorough analysis like we do for the actual development of the budget, or as has been done in the last couple of years. So in May, the carryover estimate was $100,000. We knew that that was a conservative estimate. We knew that that was likely to be low, but we didn't want to overestimate that carryover. Based on our FY20 end of year actuals, we now know that that carryover is $358,000 approximately. So there's about $258,000 that we reallocated. In the revenues page, there are a couple items that were adjusted. One is line 5.1 investment earnings. This was decreased to reflect annualizing the actual investment earnings from July 1 through the end of 2020, calendar year 2020. This also takes into account that we have not had CD investment thus far in the year, so it's possible that this will pick up. I need to talk to our investment person later this week to see if that's possible, but I wanted to be conservative here. I don't want to overestimate on revenue. On 5.2, that line was adjusted to reflect no town hall rentals for this fiscal year. And the reason that there's a negative amount, 125, is because there was a returned deposit. So those are both fairly straightforward, and it's not big money in the scheme of things, but while it was in there, wanted to get that right. Any questions on revenue? For operations, just a second. So after making those adjustments on the revenue page, then there was about 245,000 remaining, and 125,000 of that roughly was reallocated to operations. So the way that that was reallocated to these line items, in line 11.2, this was updated to reflect expenses that occurred in the first half of FY21, and then also to estimate the expenses for the rest of the year. So this included adjusting some of the hours for contract office assistant based on what's happened through this year. We didn't really know we were going to be with COVID when we created this budget, so this is just trying to make this more realistic. This also has the backfill for my position is included in this line item. And then we have the parking enforcement officer, which I decreased that since we haven't had parking enforcement that's been happening this year. So that's 11.2. Are there any questions on 11.2? None? Okay. So then moving on to 11.4, this is professional fees. So this includes a decrease of costs in videography because we've been having online meetings. It's a different cost for having this edited versus video at the meeting. Also increased the estimate for accounting expenses. When I was out on leave, our contract accountant picked up additional duties. And so there were more expenses in the first half of the year than we typically have. And then also added expenses for SRTS project management. Are there any questions on 11.4? Okay. 11.5. This is our insurance, and this was an adjustment made based on our actuals. So our insurance company gets pretty close when they give us estimates, but they don't often get it exactly right to the dollar. So this had to be adjusted to account for that. The next line is 13.5. This was the Arboretum, trees, parks, and grounds. This was increased in anticipation of spring tree work and planned prunings or emergencies. So in this one, I'm looking at the burn rate, and I just wasn't comfortable with where it was at, and knowing that we tend to spend more in the spring, it just seemed like that needed to be increased a bit. Any questions on 13.5? Okay. Let's see, then the last one there was just adding more to the contingency, again, just to give some flexibility if there's things that come up on the operations side for the remainder of the fiscal year. Then the next thing is that there was, yes.
This is Jerry Lee. I was too slow on the mute
Oh,
button.
sure, no problem.
On the Arboretum adjustment, did you take into account the RFP that Debbie put out for the Porcupine Woods restoration?
No, that is on the capital budget. Is where
That's
that's coming from.
capital. Okay, I
Yeah.
wasn't sure where you were putting that. Thank you.
Yep, sure. So then the next or last item for operations is the transfer to capital. So as I mentioned, there was back a couple pages. It was 245 that was remaining, and 25,000 was allocated in operations. So 120,000 is then transferred to the capital account. So that's the remainder of that carryover. So in the capital budget, the first item that was changed is item 27.2, and this is town hall. This is adding $50,000 to our sort of savings account for our town hall renovations. Let's see, next is 28.1. We added 20,000 here. This is, again, another kind of savings account to eventually be able to move the utility poles that are in the Penn Place parking lot. And then 28.2, we added 50,000 in anticipation of stormwater projects for that would be charged to that line item. Any questions on those three items so far? Okay. The next change is for 29.2, and this was adding just shy of $10,000, 9,670, and this again would be in anticipation of, this would be tree removals and tree plantings, and again, just because spring's a busy time, and as Phil Normandy and I have sort of worked out systems, I think we've gotten more efficient. I know it's been a little tricky with new tree contractors, but I think that things are kind of starting to pick up. Anticipate that there'll be quite a bit that's done this spring. So I wanted to make sure there was enough in the budget there to be able to get done what needs to get done.
Andrea,
Yes.
doesn't that also include the monies for the RFP that Jerry Lee was speaking to?
For the RFP, yeah, well, yeah, that could be in there as well. I guess I was thinking more, that would be part of 28.2 as well, but again, it, you know, we could probably could probably be for 28.2, which we should probably rename at some point rather than storm drains.
28.2 is the storm drains. Why would we put Arboretum?
Right, well, our stormwater projects are also coming out of there, so storm drains isn't probably a great name for that line item, but I think Arboretum, the Porcupine Woods project could certainly come out of 29.2 as well.
Oh yeah,
we may need to move some.
I would not put it in 28.2 because this is all plantings.
Yeah, okay, we can do that. We may need to move more from contingency as the year goes on.
Yeah, Jerry Lee, do you recall? I thought the ask for the RFP was about 10K. Do you remember?
Yeah, that we were estimating less than 10K.
So I think that is where what I was thinking it was on the 29
We may want to add,
line.
um,
One more.
a little more, but I think what I would like to do is probably pull some from contingency then to be able to do that.
Well, we'll find out if we may actually add a little money under that SRTS line. Project up at 23 and we should know hopefully sometime in the next few weeks, I hope.
Okay.
Get a better number. You were talking with Mary Rutke, right, on what I need?
Right. Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. So you may not have to go from contingency.
So I think for in between now for the introduction and then for the adoption next month, I would plan to probably make that 29.2 more than that then, to account for both the planned tree work and for the RFP, for the work that comes out of the RFP, just to give a little breathing room there. I don't think it needs to be doubled necessarily, but maybe 15,000 or something, just to kind of leave a little space for both.
I don't, not to beat this to death here, but trying to, let me see, how much have we spent? We've spent 24, almost 25,000
Mhm.
in December, and what we had budgeted for was the 66, and where I'm going with this, Andrea, is how did that compare? Have it somewhere to last year's budget, because I just, if we're about comparable, it makes sense, but if we've already put a lot more in there for in the May 20 adopted budget, I'm wondering really what else, Bill was thinking, especially when we need the monies for the RFP and the additional plannings. Is that where Phil Normandy is thinking that additional monies would also include the plantings within the outfall? Because we probably are going to have that, right, Jerry Lee?
Right, the under 10,000 estimate covers both the plantings and the installation. We
Okay.
want to look at potentially, and I think they were looking at that as a separate contract, was some 2 years of maintenance to make sure that they take well. But
Okay.
the committee is going to come up with a spring planting list in addition to the fall planting list. So if our burn rate is higher than expected, Andrea, it might be worth adding the extra just to be safe.
I think the other piece of it too that I'm thinking about, I mean, in addition to kind of getting more efficient and getting on more of a routine schedule with getting tree work done, is that also we don't have Mr. Greg anymore. And so it's sort of more of an unknown in terms of what these things will cost. So just giving a little more breathing room there. Obviously, doesn't mean we have to spend it. And if we don't need to, we won't. But just giving a little more flexibility there to get done whatever tree work needs to get done, because as you all know, it's constant. So.
Okay. All right, carry on.
The last item then is removing funds from the sidewalk planning line item. Really, that's effectively zeroing it out, except that there had been a very small charge there, $330. So it just adjusts the budget to account for that, but it effectively sort of zeroes out that line item for this year.
So, Terry Lee, I am curious about that line item, and it's unfortunate that Stephen's not here, but at one we had resolved to look at engineering and design work for potentially completing the sidewalk at that last stretch of Oxford from Montrose to Kenilworth, and then also looking at design options for extending Kenilworth towards the north. So I know we did some work on that in 2020, and then we discontinued that work. But when we do our budget work session later this year, I would like to just put a marker out there that we review priorities in terms of future sidewalk design and not just say we're not going to do any in the future. And I guess I'm trying to make the statement, Andrea, that by zeroing it out, I don't want the public to think that the council has no intention of revisiting sidewalks.
Okay. So let me
Understood, we don't have any currently planned.
Let me interject, okay? Because this is just a mid-year adjustment for this current fiscal year, which ends June 30th. And we know realistically that we're not going to get to the sidewalks, and that's for planning. That's Clark Bazaar, so that we're not going to get to that this spring. But we will have the FY22, which is what you were alluding to. I don't know if we're going to have a retreat or not. And that is where we would revisit that. But realistically, you know, that's not what's needed to finish out this year, because we're not going to get to it. But we'll have money again to look at for the FY22 to reestablish that if we so desire. We have a lot of projects here. If stormwater is a big one, and there's more than just one of those projects happening. And we also made a promise to those living along Oxford that we were going to repave Oxford. So that's something that has to be revisited in the for. I'm just throwing those things out because I agree with you, Sherry Lee. We definitely need to fix that asphalt sidewalk between Oxford and Kenilworth, and also down Waverly where it joins up with Montrose. So I don't think there's about anybody's mind. We won't be doing it. It's just a matter of when, and won't be this year.
Right. I just want to make sure that in our notes, we reflect it, that we'll take that up in the budget work session. But and thank you for reminding me about Waverly.
Okay, that's it from me on the budget item. I don't know if anybody has any more questions or if there's any other items to discuss there. Okay.
So without any other discussion, may this be the time that someone on the council would like to make a motion to approve the introduction of the ordinance? If you've read the ordinance, that is.
This is Jerry Lee. I will make a motion to approve the ordinance with the amendments to the line items that we just discussed.
I think we had.
You need a second. Second.
Okay, Dan. Everybody in favor? Anybody who's not in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So nobody. Okay. And Mario.
Aye, I'm in favor.
Okay. I think I heard Phil, right?
Yeah.
All right. We good on that, Andrea?
Yes, so just to clarify then, Jerry Lee, the intent of what you were saying then, so the next version that you'll see will already take into account, we'll bump the 29.1, well, that'll be a $15,000 add, and then that will reduce the contingency by the amount needed to make that happen. Because that would be approving it as amended. Okay, got it.
Yes, thank you.
29.2, Andrea, right? Or are we putting it at 29.1? 2 is Arboretum,
Sorry.
29.1 is Parks and Open Space.
That's right. I
29.2.
know to say 29.2.
20.2,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. All right, thank you very much, Andrea, for getting that done for us. Really
Sure.
appreciate it. It's good work.
It's good to have you back, Andrea.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Okay, next action item is the introduction of charter amendment resolution, and also the ordinance that would go along with that. So we will have to take them one at a time, but Andrea, I'll let you clear this for everybody.
Sure. So the first item is the charter amendment. So this is a charter amendment that essentially the reason we're doing it is to allow us to do vote by mail and have have some different features to our election this year because of COVID, but I'm trying to keep it as similar to last year as possible, with the exception of some questions that we'll talk about later when we talk about the ordinance. So in this charter resolution, this language is the same as last year, except that it removes a specific date. And what that does is it gives the council flexibility if and only if the state of emergency has been declared by the governor, the council would have authorization to implement emergency election procedures. It doesn't mean that you would have to, it just gives you that flexibility to do that under that circumstance. And we're able to do this in this way, to amend the charter in this way. If anybody asks you about this, usually it's a more drawn out process, but it's because of the governor's executive order from last year is still in effect that gives local governments the flexibility to do a charter amendment in this way. So it's the exact same language as last year, except for on the charter amendment where you see the brackets in the phrase for 2020, it would just remove that language.
Why wouldn't we, instead of removing it, and maybe you said this and I missed it, why wouldn't we insert for 2021?
The reason is that charter amendments are a lift. So they required me to work with our attorney. We have certain documents that have to be sent to the state. There's certain documents that the attorney has to verify, has to be signed by all members of council. It's something you try not to do every year. And if we're still in this circumstance with maybe variants of COVID or something like that, it would be nice for council to have the flexibility to, the charter amendment would already be done. That part would not need to be addressed again. And again, this only applies if there's a state of emergency that the governor's declared and if council wants to do something. So it's not like, it doesn't mean that it has to change the character of the elections going forward. It's meant to be narrow for a circumstance when there's a state of emergency called by the governor and council wants to do something to implement emergency election procedures.
So for future years, if this continues and this is voted or adopted by council, then we don't have to revisit this resolution. Right? But
Yep, that's right.
up to whether or not, I think we have to entertain another or again if it comes up, but we don't have to go back and amend the charter.
That's right.
Because we'll have it in the charter that council already has the, the responsibility and flexibility to decide if to choose.
Yep, that's right.
Etc.
Andrea, this is Jerry Lee, and I apologize, I didn't catch this when I reviewed it before. Are we taking advantage of the governor's executive order specifically for the COVID emergency in order to do this differently than we would for any other charter amendment? Because with the council, I just want to explain why I'm asking that question. Last year, we very clearly expressed the intent that we would move towards a permanent change that went through the full process as opposed to taking advantage of the emergency. So I want to make sure we all understand whether we are taking advantage of the emergency and cutting any normal procedure out for this.
So I don't have an answer for you in terms of what the normal procedure is for a charter amendment, because I haven't been through that. I could certainly ask our attorney and find the answer to that. But I know that when the attorney and I were talking about this, because I've been back for 1 week now. So when we were talking about this last week, what he said to me is, it's fine, you still have time, you can still do this. The governor's executive order is not expired. So I don't know what the normal timeline is for that. I don't know how far off that we would have otherwise been. But again, this doesn't prescribe that something has to be done. All it's saying is that if there's a state of emergency that the governor's declared, the council has the authorization to implement emergency election procedures. And then those procedures are spelled out in the ordinance and the emergency election plan. So all this charter amendment does is sort of tease up that if there's an emergency going on, that it's in the charter that council has flexibility to have emergency election procedures.
And this is a council vote at the time, assuming it's still a state of emergency into the future. This is a council decision. If the state of emergency is, if it ends, and this is really null and void unless there's another state of emergency.
Yep, that's right.
And then
That's right.
if it kicks back in 2023, it's the council's vote to decide if we want to implement this new ordinance or not.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Trying to find the section in the charter about what it takes to amend. If I remember right, when we reviewed this last time, there's a slightly longer review period or something like that for a regular charter amendment versus an emergency. So this would not be getting the same public notice that a normal charter amendment would. I could be wrong. And I was wondering if you have enough time before this election to do it the right way.
We don't. This is the only way that we can do it is through the authority granted to us by the governor's executive order.
Well, we certainly can do a charter amendment following the procedures in the charter anytime.
Right. It wouldn't be, if it was about the election, though, it wouldn't be able to be done in time for the election if there was not a governor's executive order allowing us to do this.
So,
Then I would suggest that we stick to a 2021 only change and we go through the process using the charter's stated procedures for making a permanent change separately. Because that was discussed at length and there were residents who expressed a concern about that. And with all of the national spotlight on electoral procedural changes, I'm not comfortable making a permanent change in a rush.
Jerry Lee, I'm just curious, and I'm all for questions and being conscientious, so I think that's great. I don't understand. Help me understand what could be wrong, what could be bad about this if it simply allows for the council to vote on something. Like, to me, it just seems to create efficiency while leaving all power with the council.
I'm not suggesting that the charter change isn't a good idea because I definitely expressed interest in that last year. I just think that public notice and public transparency is our #1 job as a council and as a town government. And I don't think there's enough notice in this to justify a permanent charter change because our charter is very clear about what the public notice requirements are for a permanent charter change. The governor's executive order only grants us this change during the COVID emergency.
Got it. Okay, so your concern isn't the actual impact of what this would do. Your concern is that we're making a change to the charter that we haven't announced with enough notice or communication to the town. And so
Exactly.
It's more of a principled thing about that than actually having the concern that it could be risky.
Agreed. And I feel like I, as a legislator for the town, do not have enough information to know if we are making a legal decision. Because it's not clear to me that the governor's executive order authorized permanent charter amendments.
I think it does, based on the conversation I had with the attorney and what he recommended in this language last year and in the language this year. Because last year he recommended not putting in a date.
Okay, fair enough. But we did, as a council, discuss this, and there were a number of council members at the time who expressed concern about making a permanent change without going through the prescribed process in our charter for a permanent change.
So I want to also add to something that Dan had expressed and a concern that you have also expressed, Jerry Lee. There are lots of things in our charter that give responsibility and function to council members. but we don't have all ordinances in place, you know, to regulate them. So all this does is set the flexibility that if there is another emergency, the council members then have a right to go ahead and introduce an ordinance. And that is also where the public has the opportunity to participate or object or get involved or respond. So you're not taking anything away from the public's ability to be in this. This just gives flexibility to the town in case there's an emergency of any kind, not even just COVID, but what comes with it each time the council decides they need to do something because of an emergency, there has to be a new ordinance. Right, Andrea? Right? I mean, whether it's
Yeah,
COVID
that's
or
right.
whether it's, you know, a nuclear threat, you know, that's when the ordinances come into play and you enact them.
Right.
This establishes the flexibility, like Dan said, the efficiency.
Mhm.
It's not saying that you're going to do it. You only do it with the ordinance. You got it?
Right, I understand. I'm just saying that I'm not comfortable making a permanent change. I think we could take advantage of the emergency executive order for a 2021 change and then make the permanent change prescribed in the charter.
We already heard that our attorney has said we don't need the date. In fact, he is recommending not put a date in. So, okay, this is up to council.
So Andrea, do you need like, just explain to me the process here? Like, I hear Jerry Lee's point. I get it. I've heard the mayor, Andrea, I've heard the content. Like, where are we now? I would like, what happens next? Can we vote on such a thing?
Yeah, so this is just the introduction. And so the next month it'd be up for the adoption. So it would be the same way that we do ordinances. So somebody would move to approve it, and then you all would vote, and then would come up again next month.
Got it. Well, I think, and Jerry Lee, you know, with all total respect, and I love your diligence on the process, makes sense, knowing that we could adopt it now, and that there is another 30 days before we'd actually vote on it. I would make a motion to, I never get the words right here, but do I adopt it as a proposal?
You're making a motion for the introduction of a charter amendment resolution.
Yes.
Can I, this is Phil. I got a quick, this is the one here that needs to be fixed.
We can't hear you, or I can't hear you. Anybody else can?
I didn't hear what he said.
There's a typographical error that needs to be fixed.
Where is that, Phil?
Section 3, second to last line, an amendment by the village council.
Yeah, town. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Andrea, you're back for one day already, and you have pull it together, Andrea.
So predictable. So predictable.
Yes, gosh. You know, I thought you would have corrected that during your leave. But it's great we have Phil's diligence, and I do love Jerry Lee.
Ron.
So, I'll make the motion to adopt it as a.
No, you're not adopting.
Yes, and then I'll defer to my colleagues on their vote.
This is introduction, correct?
Introduction.
Correct.
It is. All right.
I'll second that with the correction of the typo.
All right. Now, all in favor? Let me see. Okay, Mario, and I know Dan and Phil.
Phil is yes in favor.
So we have 3 instances.
I'll vote
I
nay.
guess you're voting nay. Okay. So this is approved with majority.
And Kathy,
Yes, sir.
however we sort of communicate from the meeting minutes or, like out to the town, knowing that there's this sort of 30-day period and then a vote. I think Jerry Lee's point is we could address some of this by making sure folks know about it. I'm not sure how we could go about that, but Kathy or Andrea, maybe you could just think about that.
Okay. Yep.
When we put it on the agenda for March, Dan, it'll say adoption.
I just wonder if there's an additional thing. I mean, I realize it's incumbent on townsfolk to pay attention if they care, but I think Jerry Lee's point about transparency is also, it's incumbent on us to probably put a magnifying glass on it, just to remind folks.
Who's speaking?
What do you think about putting it out on the town forum?
Sure. To me, I mean, this is, I think, Jerry Lee's point of there's never, regardless of the topic, and when we think something, some of us think something is straightforward or whatever, Jerry Lee's point of, keeping everything you do under a magnifying glass is good, is just good protocol. So I like using the town forum for it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't know if the timing of the bugle is probably too late, and I know we can't post in the post office anymore because you don't want people loitering in there, so that kind of rules that out. But so whatever leverage we can pull, Andrea, let's just, to Dan's point and to Jerry's point, let's get out there so there's no, nefarious thinking going on behind, that we want to just be transparent.
And I think the forum is better. The bugle goes out beyond the town.
Fair.
So
Okay.
the forum is strictly for residents, so that'd be a good place.
Okay. I'm just.
Okay. All right.
I think that's a good idea. I agree.
Okay.
Okay, great. Andrea, we're on the next action item.
Okay.
And that's more involved because you're going to go through the plan, I guess.
That's right.
And then we introduce the ordinance to enact this emergency
Yep.
procedure. Okay.
That's right.
For it.
So this is the concurrent ordinance with the charter amendment and references the change to the charter, and it also references an attached town election plan. And so the election plan is part of the ordinance by reference. The ordinance language itself should look very familiar because it's the same as the ordinance language last year. The plan itself, I tried to mark where I made changes, but then also I inserted comments where I had specific questions for council to consider if there's things that we want to do differently this year, because we do have a little bit more time this year. So there's some things that we can think about. So the first item that was on here, I just wanted to point this out to you, was just that I intend to renew the contract with our previous election service provider. There are a limited number of folks that have experience doing vote by mail in Maryland, and they're working on elections in Maryland, and there's even fewer that have experience with vote by mail. And when I was on a meeting with the other town clerks, it seems like we're all sort of using the same election service provider because of this, because this is someone who provides this service here, and the cost was reasonable, I think, for what they provided to us last year, and the cost would be comparable again to last year for this year, actually the same. Some of the dates are changed here for this summary timeline, and this is to give a little bit more breathing room. This may be something that we want to come back to as we talk through some of the other items on here. So I just want to maybe kind of bookmark this summary timeline and maybe come back to it if we need to. So everything else in here is pretty much the same as last year. And the first question I wanted to ask you about was, do we want to ask residents to have to request a ballot, or do we want to send ballots to all registered voters again this year? And the pro of sending a ballot to all registered voters is that I think it's probably greater participation because it removes a barrier. You don't have to request one, you just get one. But the flip side of that is because we don't have mail delivery, and because PO boxes it's not like there's a publicly available list from the government that they provide to us. So it's somewhat of an art form, maybe, trying to get that list right of residents' PO boxes. So last year, we knew that we had some residents that were registered to vote that we didn't have PO boxes. So we tried to put letters on doors and ask them to email us and let us know what their PO box was. And I think that worked pretty well. But just wanted to throw this question out to you all for your consideration and what your thoughts are, if anybody has a strong preference one way or the other.
Andrew, I have a question. If you live in town and you don't have a PO box, how does what are those people? How do they? I didn't know that was such a thing.
So when you register to vote, the challenge that we had was folks that register to vote and only put their home address but don't put a mailing address, because there's nowhere for the election service provider to mail them a ballot.
How do they get mail on a usual basis?
Right. So it's not that they don't have a PO box, it's that we don't know the PO box, because we only know it if they've told us or if they put it in their voter registration. Some people put in the mailing address and some people don't put in their mailing address. So that was the challenge, and that was it was a big lift last year, but we also have more time this year. So it's I just wanted to sort of bring this up because we do have a little more time to kind of think about this year.
We would have last year's list as a starting point, correct? Of
right.
And PO boxes, and then
yes.
Do you have any sense of what percentage of residents, or at least homes, we collected?
Oh, if Joanne's on the call, she might remember, but I think it was, or Elizabeth might remember, but I think it was close to 100 of folks that we didn't have.
So almost a third of, like, at least homes, physical homes, we didn't have a count.
Yeah, and some of them were also, what I'm trying to remember from last year is if that was in total of the folks that we had to find out what their PO box was, or if that also included folks that were registered to vote here, but maybe it was like an address in a different state or overseas, and we weren't sure if this was actually where they're registered to vote, if they really need to be mailed a ballot.
And I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think there are non-residents who still have PO boxes. So it's not like you can just stick it's not like you can just stick a notice in everyone's PO box, because there are, I don't know what percentage, but I know for a fact there are folks who no longer live in town who kept that PO box.
That's
so
right.
Yeah, because I would think just go there and just stick a thing in everyone's PO box, but I don't think you can do that.
No, you can't with especially, I mean, you can't anyway, but then you wouldn't want to when it comes to voting. You'd want to make sure you're going off who's registered and all that. Yeah. Yeah.
You also have multiple voters in a household, right? So
yeah. Point.
Right.
And Andrew, what if you kind of did both? I mean, I presume that there is no objection, and I presume that the majority view in town would be, let's get as many people to vote as we can. Like, there's no vote. I wouldn't think I would think voter suppression is a minority view here. So I'm just trying to take like the big national issues. So what if we sort of did a combination of we have an initiative to try to send the ballots to everyone and also simultaneously notify everyone of that you can also request a ballot, or you could validate the information that we have. That it might get the most. I mean, I realize it's more administration, but I guess what's more important for a government than trying to get everybody to vote? I realize now there are different opinions on that.
Yeah.
I interject. Elizabeth has had, very hands-on with this, over the years. And Elizabeth, I know you're on the call. Would you like to add anything, or what's your thoughts on this?
Can you hear me? Can everybody
Yes.
hear? No, I don't have anything to add. I think that last year we sent out postcards, right, Andrea? And
we also did send out postcards.
pardon me?
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. We did as much, I think, for forethought and notification as we could, given the sort of limited time that we had, to let people know that we needed their PO boxes, their street addresses, their names. There are very few people in town, Dan, to respond to your concerns, who have Kensington addresses. I can only think of one family in town at the moment. There maybe have been 5 over the years, and they were for older people who could no longer go to the post office. So it's a really minimum amount of residents who have a Kensington address, and that means that a little truck drives up from Kensington to deliver the mail to their little mailbox in front of their house. But I think one of the challenges that we faced was that when new people move in, unless they get in touch with us, we don't even know that they have arrived. We don't have contact information for them. I think Joanne and I have both tried really hard in the last year to keep what we call the internal directory up to date. So I think it will be less of a challenge this year than it was last year. And also, I think Andrea is correct about the 100 people approximately who we had to try to get updated information for. And that's really only a quarter of the households in town, not a third. So that's all I have.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You know, we have election procedures where we are supposed to have those made public prior to the election, and I'm asking whether that is 30 days or is it 60 or 45? Do y'all remember? Because that's what we're trying to also do this year. We wanted to get ahead of the game here, because last year we, you know, with all that was going on with COVID, you know, we barely could get any of the procedures out in time. We just barely made it. But we are supposed to get these done and made public within a certain time frame before.
Kaki, are you talking about a specific aspect of the election? I'm not sure what you're alluding to.
You know, anything to do with election procedures. We're, you know, to let the public know we're supposed to give them a certain amount of time. And it's either in the ordinance or the charter.
I updated the election page last week or the week before, I can't remember. So the dates are there, and then Andrea put together a schedule. And we certainly, I mean, last year we posted on the bulletin board, the town bulletin board, we had sort of an election section where we posted things. I don't know what you think about that now, not wanting there to be a lot of people in the post office at a given time.
Elizabeth, I think what Kaki was referencing was in the code, there's a conduct of elections generally, 78-25, letter C, and it's 60 days. So 60 days prior to the election is when you'd have published rules and procedures.
So it's March.
I mean, we'd be okay because of this ordinance, and also we'd only be off by 5 days of 60. So it will be 55 days instead of 60 days, something like that.
All right, are we ready? It's 8:31. Is there any other discussion on this? Is there?
Yeah, I have a couple other questions. So another question was, I wanted to hear council's thoughts on having a Dropbox or not. When Elizabeth and I were talking about this, I think we could do it, but it would be challenging, and there would certainly be a cost. to have a Dropbox that was up for the entire amount of time between when ballots are sent and when ballots are due, because we would have to buy that Dropbox. It has to be bolted in a certain way. It has to be bolted in a location where a car can't ram it. And then best practice that the other clerks have talked about is that it would then have a security camera on it as well. The alternative that I think could be doable, and this is making an assumption that one of us will be fully vaccinated and have it, kick in for the 2 or 3 weeks or whatever after the second vaccination by election day between town staff and election judges. And that's having a Dropbox on election day. And I say that somebody would be vaccinated because the way around having a camera and all this stuff is to have somebody literally sitting there with it the whole time. I think that that's doable, but I don't know that it provides a real benefit. I've kicked it around. If people are mailing their ballot at the post office anyway, is there really a benefit of putting it in the mailbox versus putting it in a Dropbox and then having us mail that to the election service provider? It also creates another kind of step in between. So then we would have to account for the election judges would need to be a part of that process of certifying the number of ballots and making sure that they're sent, stored securely and then sent the next day and all of that. So wanted to raise it. It can be done, but I don't know that it presents enough of a benefit to residents. So just wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think the fact that we have a post office, an indoor post office drop inside Penn Place is in effect a Dropbox. Yes,
Yeah.
it require the postal trip to the service provider. But last year we did it all with an emergency. We left enough time, and I assume the plan does this time as well, for the campaign to account for that trip. So I think it's necessary.
Okay.
I tend to agree with Shirley on that.
Agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree also. I don't think it's going to really buy us anything
Okay.
to do that.
Excellent. This gives me all the input that I needed. So unless you all have any more questions, that was all I wanted to ask you about. Of course, if you have any questions on anything else in here, we can talk about that too. But I really tried to keep it as close to last year as possible because everybody was sort of familiar with that, and it worked, I think, pretty well.
Sounds like you got it covered, Andrea. Does anybody want to make a motion? Well, actually, this is okay. So this
Just
is
the introduction.
and then
Yeah.
we have the introduction of the order. You already said really didn't change.
Right.
Reference to the year.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay. So unless you all want to take a minute to look at that ordinance, anybody please make a motion. If anybody makes a motion and then people say, oh, wait, I want to read it, we can stop the motion. So,
Well, I can.
do you guys?
How about if I move to introduce the town of? Well, actually, we're introducing the ordinance, are we not?
Yes, we're introducing, the introduced date is up in the corner. So it is an introduction of the ordinance to activate an emergency plan. Yeah.
Right. So I would make a motion to introduce ordinance number 2021-3, declaration of a state of emergency and ordinance to activate an emergency plan for the town election.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Dan seconds. Thank you. Is everyone in favor? Anybody not in favor? Since I didn't hear no.
Kathy, can I just say, I'm going to vote for the resolution for the ordinance simply because it is separated from the charter amendment. So I'm going to vote to introduce the resolution positively.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. That's fine. That's great. Okay, so there's no nays and all yays. So motion is passed. Thank you. Great. Thank you, Andrea. A lot of work involved in that. A lot of work for the first week.
Yes,
How you
indeed.
doing? You're burning the midnight oil. Okay, if you don't mind, I want to get a time check with everybody. We are sitting at 8:36, and or maybe we probably got a third of the way left on this agenda. Are we all okay? Is there anything we can do to speed it up? Or Dan, there was to be a discussion about train horn, which we had allotted really more time for you in that. But does anybody want to make any say anything that would help us get through this quicker?
I can keep the train section small by asking your advice on we can just quickly discuss how we want to proceed rather than doing all of the analysis now. So I can move that along more quickly.
Okay. And I'll try to be brief on the next new business item, which starts right now. So it's 8:37. I'm going to talk about a new business that's happening. It's the redevelopment of 4910 and 4920 Strathmore Avenue. This is the parcels of land where the St. Angela Hall has been, sitting at the top of the hill just up from the Holy Cross Academy. It also includes parcel of land from the Holy Cross Academy right near the Strathmore Road. So all in all, I think it's about 15 acres. I'm sorry that the numbers just seem to shift. I think there's been a little bit of discussion on how much acreage is really involved here, but the Sisters of the Holy Cross sold all their land to a developer named EYA. Those are letters, EYA. And that developer has done a lot of projects in the state of Maryland. They're well known for doing some good projects. Also, the Holy Cross Academy sold some of their land to EYA. Involved in this, and I'm going to just let you all know first here quickly. Been on some calls with me about this, as has George Martin, who's chair of the land use. I've now asked Jerry Lee, he will be the lead. So Jerry Lee, maybe you're taking notes, but I don't know. I'll try to follow up with you later. Anyway, just so you know, we're going to distribute this oversight. What's happening? They are going to put in about 112 units of townhomes and single-family homes right along Strathmore, across from Stillwater. Where the St. Angela Hall's convent is, that's going to be a Brandywine senior living facility, and that's going to have 120 units. There's a few issues that have raised some concerns among Phil and George and Jerry Lee and me and some of the neighbors in the Garrett Park Estates and White Point Park. This involves pedestrian safety. It involves traffic jams on Strathmore and landscaping. More specifically about traffic, they are creating 3 entrances into this development area. And the Holy Cross Academy, even its current entrance driveway, is part of this, but it's being moved a little bit further. But everybody comes in through that. There will be another road for the that's called the Boulevard. There'll be another road across from Stillwater just to get to the townhomes. And then there's another entrance to get into the backside of the Brandywine Senior Facility, which in a way is sort of like what we have up top of the hill anyway, at the parking lot for St. Angela Hall, sort of like that. Concern is there is been a decision so far, no traffic control measures are needed. They did a traffic assessment study last year, I guess it was DOT, and they didn't find any cause for making any changes. They're all saying, that's COVID. Who was on the roads? Which is exactly what we asked. And they said, well, within their modeling, they put in some parameters or variables to sort of take that into account, and it still came out that there was not a need for a traffic light or for any other thing. So those are our main concerns, and there may be others, but within this, there is the missing middle piece. 15% of the units have to be within the multi-price, multi-point pricing for housing, which is like the missing middle. And I think that's all I can say. There's a lot going on with that. Phil, do you want to jump in on that?
So it's supposed to be, I mean, basically, there will be a total of 6 people, call them apartments in senior living. And then there will be 115 or so townhouses in several separate buildings, and then 9 houses across the front of Strathmore, which will have driveways that will actually be on the back. And there will be an entrance across. The county wants an entrance across from Stillwater, and then the main entrance, the quote-unquote boulevard entrance, will be essentially where the academy entrance is now, but just moved to the east like 50 feet or something. And then, as Kaki mentioned, there will be another entrance like for utility deliveries, those sorts of deliveries and so forth, to the Brandywine facility. That'll be up further. The Brandywine facility is going to have a lot of massing from what we've seen, the initial sketches that we've seen of this thing. It's going to be a kind of big building, even though it's only going to be 3 stories tall. They've got a bunch of green space, but in terms of park and recreation type space, they don't really have much of anything. They claim they're going to put it in, but it was never shown on any drawings. They are going to have a buffer zone, they call it, but that's basically mandated by environmental laws that you have a buffer zone that runs along that creek, the entire length of the creek, from Strathmore all the way up to the academy. And they will be putting a sidewalk that will go across the whole front of the property, connecting to the sidewalk that comes down from Symphony Hall right now. So they'll go from Symphony all the way up to essentially where the church is. The Symphony Park. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got the wrong thing. What else was there? So that, and,
Yeah, I think there's.
and
Go ahead.
Holy Cross, the Academy of Holy Cross is pushing for a traffic light, which a lot of people feel, myself included, that's really going to jam up traffic on Strathmore. I mean, between having 2 traffic lights, ours and theirs, so that's another thing to look at. But that's pretty much what I remember.
Thank you. And so one of the things we want to recommend, right, Phil, is, and Jerry Lee, is to see if there can be an egress made, and a roadway made to connect over to Tuckerman. There's plenty of land there, but that might alleviate what we're all concerned about with, major backups on Strathmore, and what even with, emergency vehicles trying to get through, and so forth. I did want to also mention the timeline for the development. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is going to be a sell and then build model. So they're not just building everything. They're going to only, for whatever unit they sell, then they build it. So, my earbuds.
Yeah.
And they're looking at, possibly really start to build. I think I have in the summer of 2022.
Yep.
There's a lot of things they got to do starting in winter, but so what concern this may be is, you can read into this, that this could go on for a couple of years. All of that right there on Strathmore. We have Eli. Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Oh, I was just going to say that their thought is that they're going to have like they'll do an initial set of the townhouses, but then they're only planning on building probably 3 per month until they build it out. And that's all based on how fast they think they can sell them. So this thing could drag on, we figured, for up to 3 years.
So it's a question. So I guess for the question for this group then is what recourse does Garrett Park have? I mean, other than the fact that their traffic study is clearly flawed, because anyone who's driven on Strathmore prior to March 13th, 2020 knows that it's an absolute nightmare between 7:30 in the morning and 8:15 in the morning, and from 3:30 in the afternoon till 7 p.m. in the evening, 5 days a week.
So this is where Jerry Lee's going to come in, and Phil will be your backup. Steve, you can always reach out to Steve. George Martin, land use chair, knows an awful lot about this as well. So what's happening is that EYA has to submit an application for rezoning. Currently it's residential. They have to put it in for commercial and residential. Timing is of the essence, because there's a certain confusion about whether or not the application has been submitted yet to the county zoning office and planning board. Once it is submitted, then all communication becomes ex parte. And the only way we can get our voice heard is to attend a hearing or and put something in the record, submit a letter. So these are things that Jerry Lee's going to be helping, and she's coordinating with the president of the Citizens Association of BPE. Is that right, Jerry? You're connecting with him now? So
yes, and also with the developer for future informational meetings and the Garrett Park Principal Elementary School.
Yeah, that's great too. Thank you. So we are still trying to find out if that's been put on the hearing schedule. If it hasn't, then we might be able to even get county council involved. So there's things up in the air right now, but we kind of know what our options are to get involved. There isn't a lot that we can do, but even just to get on the public record about some things, and maybe the zoning, the hearing examiner would even take into consideration some of our recommendations to go back to EYA with. So that's why all of this is moving kind of quickly right now. And of course, EYA doesn't really, as you can imagine, really doesn't want any pushback from communities, nor would they really want much change in what they're doing. So you all can understand that. So kind of a push and pull here.
At the risk of delaying things, Kathy, just for the members of the public listening, can you explain ex parte communications, why that matters very quickly?
Yeah, it's really it's for privacy and proprietary reasons, that if somebody is making a request of somebody else, EYA is making a request to the county, and those people in the county, or anybody in general who would have a role in making a decision for that party's request, once they've been alerted, they're not allowed to talk to other people about it. It's sort of like procurement sensitive kind of information, you're really not supposed to talk about. So that's what ex parte is. That means council members, county council members, anybody who has a role in making a judgment or approval or not approval become ex parte. They will be able to discuss it with outside people, like us, which is what we're getting right now. And I keep saying, well, we haven't seen, there's no application that's been submitted. The zoning office doesn't have one, but they're going back and check. So everybody's just trying to, I think, damp it down. Does that, Jerry Lee, you want to add to it?
No, thank you. I appreciate you explaining that.
So these guys built Strathmore Park. They built
over in Grosvenor.
Yeah.
Build Symphony Park, but
Right.
They're building or have built just over in Grosvenor.
Yeah.
Right, and other places. Yeah. it's just what's going to happen to Strathmore and Kensington, by the way. And I mentioned, Jerry Lee, if you caught this earlier in my email, Kensington is also concerned because they know how this will affect Strathmore all the way up to Knowles, Connecticut. All the mayors in the Montgomery County chapter have said they would support anything we want to put in writing with our concerns and issues. So if we want to write a letter to the county or to the planning board, they would jump in on that as well, just to be supportive. So you know. If that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you guys, and thank you, Chair Lee, for really. It sounds like for really driving this. It's I'm really depressed right now. So.
Oh, so am I, but I'm sorry that you are.
I don't. I'm not anti-development by any stretch. I mean, that's life. That's society. It's just I mean, I'm all for it, and the traffic on Strathmore is going to make me move out of Garrett Park. That I will tell you. When this is
oh dear, I hope not. But it's also the look, right? I mean, everybody loves the way the trees are landscaped between, in our town, in our town border.
Yeah.
I
No,
heard this just
great.
recently from some people who are concerned citizens for the lower part of Strathmore.
Yeah.
And they would very much like to see something similar done, but we don't think. So that's one of those landscape issues, as well as pedestrian safety. So, try less of an urban feel to it and more of a sort of park rural like we have in the park.
Yeah, I'm with Mario. Thank you for digging in and it bums me out. Like I pulled up the Google Maps, so I'm just looking at it, and it's just a bummer. And I'm with you, Mario. Like development's development, but there are ways to potentially do it. And the traffic is already a nightmare. Like the traffic is a nightmare. So that thought of connecting Tarkoman, I thought sounded like a really good idea to get some other flow that way.
Yeah, come in from Tuckerman, the other side of Tuckerman, right? The loop around Tuckerman, Tuckerman to the other neighborhood, whatever it's called. And it's right there, the backside of the Holy Cross.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So who's going to actually write the letter?
Who's talking?
Elizabeth Himley, you are.
No, no, because I mean, if time is of the essence, then I mean, somebody's got to figure this out and step up, right? And I mean, maybe several people. Somebody wants to draft it, somebody else wants to look at it, the council wants to look at it. I mean, because I mean, wouldn't we need to notify the other municipalities if they're going to be supportive of what we put in writing? It just seems.
Elizabeth, yeah, I'll definitely, Kaki asked me to coordinate that effort, but I think we probably should clarify there would for this amendment be an opportunity to provide official input as well, not
as long as we get
stop us from sending testimony and participating in the hearing.
Jerry Lee's right. But we have to be able to get in on the schedule.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Jerry Lee, you're gonna.
And let me also just say that both Phil and George Martin, who've been involved in this and will stay involved, we're making a list of the concerns, which would be helpful to Jerry Lee for drafting issues in a letter.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you have ideas, feel free to send them to all of us, Elizabeth. Sorry, Kaki.
Good.
Okay. That's all right. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Jerry Lee. I think that's all on that, unless anybody else wants to ask anything. Okay, let's see. It is 5 of 9. Okay, so let's go to town updates. Briefly about the project and Eileen Kelly and Sanjay's concern as well. So on the XRTS project, I don't really have anything new to tell you. Although we are hoping to shortly, and Andrea may be able to nod her head on this, that we'll be getting another reimbursement or 2 reimbursements from the state. Things have been they've been sitting on our request of reimbursements for reasons of needing additional submittals and approvals of materials used. And that's sort of where we are. There's still another one that the District 3 engineers are waiting on to, cross the T and dot the I. But we also are still waiting on a punch list finish because, these subcontractors are just not right there anymore. So we still need the sidewalk for 06 done. We're trying to find a water meter in front of Suzanne Greshheim's house, Suzanne and Frank. Don't know where that went. It was on the plans. I don't know. Oh yeah, and there's a really poorly formed asphalt curb right at the entrance of what was the construction entrance to the outfall. And we're asking for that to get redone. It's just really poor quality. So that's that. We're almost done as far as I know with the auditing of documents. But, all this still has to come together. But I'm pretty hopeful that, Ryan has got that all done. If I might respond to Eileen and Sanjay's concern, it was George Miller and Phil. Did you go out there with me? Remember, a few of us went out there to look at what's that? Anyway, look at the landscaping there, the terrain, geography, topography, and we came up with some good ideas. Oh, it was Butch. I'm sorry, Butch Ross and Miller and I. So they've got some ideas, but they want to see the magnitude of the flow of water, which we can go. And we also, I think we have somebody that we can actually contract with, because likely we're going to need to get a new backhoe in there to dig out the trench and form it along the sidewalk to exit. So I haven't sent any letter because there's nothing yet to put that's definitive other than what I've said. We're going to get it done. We're just trying to see what our options are. And once I have more information, I can put it in a letter to Sanjay and Sanjay and Eileen Kelly. So that's the plan. We did get out there. They went out to see during a rainstorm, but the rainstorm wasn't enough to create what, in their opinion, any ponding. But we know it happens because I've seen it. So that's where we are. That's my update.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Kaki. Eileen, I hate to interrupt, but I didn't hear a timeline on any of that. And I do appreciate you addressing this. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have the timeline yet, Eileen. I'm sorry. What we really need to see is the water, the amount of water, which will give us an idea of what kind of filling that we put in to the trench, whether it's mud, rocks, or landscape.
It's going to rain later this week, so I'm.
Well, maybe they should go. They can get out.
Kaki, you're breaking up.
Out and look again. Sorry, we'll ask George to go out and look again, because it really comes down to what medium we're going to put into that trench to help prevent any erosion, sediment, falling in.
Okay. Well, it looks like the weather will
fill out again.
Later in the week. It's going to rain quite a bit, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, you got it. Okay. Archives, and it's 9:00. Phil, can you do that as well as stormwater? And Mario,
Yep.
feel free to jump in with the stormwater if you want, Mario.
Yeah. Let me just say this. So just for the rest of the council and the town folk and everyone else, Andrea. So Phil and I spoke, and basically based on my full disclosure, I the stormwater project was becoming too much for me with my new job. I've taken on a big role of a new company, and last 2 months, and I'm literally working a lot. So therefore, and the stormwater project, which I was working along with Chuck Berry, who's been fantastic, just became it was unfair for me to wait on me to do projects when I just can't get out in the middle of the day to like run around town right now, doing a day and do projects. So it would not be fair for the town, for the neighbors, for the council to wait on me. So Phil and I spoke, and Phil, with his engineering background, offered to step in and work with Chuck on kind of wrapping up the Rokeby project and go from there. And so this just happened. I was going to ask tonight actually if to step away, and just Phil and I happened to just connect prior to that. So just for
Okay, Mario. And it's has nothing to do with your lack of talent or intelligence. We just understand your timing. It's rough. So thank you. And you'll take over archives,
Yes.
and Phil will take over stormwater. But for tonight, is there anything to say about archives, Phil, before you speak on stormwater, which Mario, please still feel free to jump in on. So go for it, Phil.
Okay, so we'll do archives right now. So Claire recently updated the archive to include scanned material from the Garrett Park Library from the 1940s and 50s, and some completed transcriptions from the Mothers Club circa 1940s, and those were done by Montgomery County public school kids. She's also processing and scanning the Garrett Park Players Collection and plans to create a virtual exhibit on this topic, which if it's anything like their last one would be great. And she's also working on town records, managing town records, which require disposition under our state approved retention schedule. So that's it for archive.
Right,
And going.
Stormwater, yes, please.
Yep. So stormwater. Chuck Berry and I spent a bunch of time. We reviewed plans, looked over drawings. We went down to Rokeby, spent a bunch of time walking around there. Actually found a new manhole we didn't know was there. Long story short, with I apologize for my clock here. Long story short, what we're looking at is we want to get a survey. We want to get a survey done of the area because right now there's a lot of things going through there. There's a sewer pipe, there's a freshwater pipe, there's a telephone box nearby that may or may not have stuff going through there. We didn't have a good vertical survey when we did the sidewalks, which hampered us in some things. And also we need to get Jason to update the drawings to show where these manholes are because they're a big deal when it comes to where the sewers are going to be. So we see the next step as being to do a survey and try and get somebody to start working on that as early as next week. Once that's done, we update all the bid documents, and then from there we can come back and I can give you a better idea as to what's going on.
Great. Look forward to hearing about that. I guess we do need the survey. We don't want to rupture any.
Yeah, and I'll just say this. So, maybe back in December when Chuck and I were doing this, it was Chuck who just started recognizing all these variances and all these features that just weren't in the scope earlier. And then one led to another, led to another, led to another. And that's why Chuck was like, well, I'm not really comfortable with this. And then started asking other people around. And then I wasn't available, brought in Phil, and they kind of just ran with it. So I'm glad they're looking at this survey because it sounds like there's a lot of buried treasure that if we don't do this, we're going to, we put on a road. We don't
later.
Yeah.
And I will add, in addition, and thank you, Mario, but I will add also that I think it's a bit unfair to the contractors who are going to be bidding on this to not supply them with a good survey so they have an idea as to what they're looking into, because I guess in fairness, they could come back and try and change order us because we didn't tell them about this, that, or the other thing. So there's that aspect. And then we also believe strongly that the county may at some point ask us for the survey.
Okay.
This is Shirley. I don't want to drag things out, but it does seem like this is taking an inordinately long period of time. And I realize COVID was part of that, but are we comfortable that our design engineers are really working for us?
Yes, and Chuck will admit that that he was doing some other things, and it just took him a while to do some reviews and to get back onto it again. And so he was part of the holdup. He readily admits that. And yeah, our design engineer, they're working for us, but they've made a few mistakes that we've seen, and we want to get that stuff corrected.
But just so you know, Jerry Lee, I mean, they do work for other municipalities and stuff, so they're not solely working for us.
But it was kind of a perfect storm. So Jason, they dragged their feet for a long time, and then to Chuck not that, and I think Chuck's put an amazing amount of work in, but the timing. So when he finally got the stuff came in, Chuck was slammed with work, and then it was the holidays. So it was literally, like, unfortunately, for better or for worse, it was about a 4-week period where really nothing got done. And then it got fired up again after the holidays, and then I couldn't do it, and then Phil stepped in. So you're right, Jerry. It was sort of a confluence of slowdowns, but I think it sounds like we're in a good space now.
I think so. I think we have a path forward here. No pun intended. Okay, thank you, Phil and Mario. I think we're at the train horn, train whistle. Dan want to lead it off quick? It is 9:07 for anybody wondering.
Yeah, so this is a big topic, and not one that we can talk about in brief. So I would propose we don't talk about it right now, and I'll just give you a couple of minutes of the way I would propose that we talk about it. So we have a 22-page report, with the disclaimer that I really don't have any expertise in this. My assessment of the report is that it seems very well done. There's a lot of detail. There are multiple different options, along with the consultant's, recommendation on sort of the reality of feasibility or the risks related to the paths. What I would suggest is that we do two things. We commit as a council to review or study just pages 17 through 22, which is like the conclusion, or it's like the analysis. There's maybe 5 or 6 options. And that we put 20 minutes on the calendar for our next meeting, where we can really then, but I think if everybody doesn't come with some homework done, we're not going to be able to have a real discussion. And then I would suggest that, maybe we send this out to the town. I have the 4 or 5 townsfolk who have been actively pushing on this for the last year. But I think getting some folks involved, because I have a hunch that what would probably need to come out of this analysis and discussion is then maybe a town survey, because there's no, to gauge some willingness or some appetite or some desire. Because if there isn't, for example, some budgetary desire, or there is up to a certain amount, then we could know that before we choose an option. Like, hey, the majority of folks in town would be okay spending up to $75,000, but not a penny more. Okay, then let's look at our options within that. So I would propose, it's not a hard lift to read these 5 pages. It's really written in layman's terms, starting on page 17, the analysis section. And then I would ask Andrea, and Andrea, maybe you and I can talk about this offline. And obviously, I defer a lot to Phil, because he does have, I've driven kind of this process, but Phil knows way more about this than I do. So obviously, I'm interested in Phil's comments, and then, Andrea's comments based on all her experience of, like, what's a way to explore this from a municipality and the citizens' perspective that is effective. I'm thrilled that we now have a written report. All this other lore and mythology has sort of dispelled. We've got a professional. Here's the lay of the land. Now I think we need, individual analysis, group discussion, town survey, and some sort of like municipal expertise on how to go from where we are now to somewhere. Even if the conclusion is do nothing, let's put a stake in the ground with a formal, we've done this analysis and we've elected to accept the status quo, so that whoever comes after us and other townsfolk could always look to the record and have it. So that's how I view it now. I'm just trying to be succinct for the moment, but Kaki, that would be my recommendation on how we would go forward from here. And I defer to you on what else you want to do.
Sounds good. Good. do we have all the material we need to read ahead and be prepared for a discussion?
Yes, Andrea has or it was Debbie, Andrea's surrogate, who had distributed that. But Andrea or I could send it out again, and then I don't know your thought on. I mean, I think posting it, publicly. Here was this analysis that was done, and that could let's find out if people have passions and et cetera. I don't think anyone's looking to sign up for a sidewalk project, So I think we could find out who cares, who doesn't, and
Do you want to? Sorry. Was there a presentation, PowerPoint slide presentation? Yeah. So I don't know, did we get that one too? I don't know if we got that or not.
yes.
Number two, do you want to share that through the forum?
Sure.
That's up to you. I mean,
Yeah, I would say yes.
On it, the material's public, and you can do that on the website, or you can get more engagement on the forum. It's up.
I like the thought of the engagement. What my belief is that to really, really push things like this forward, we need to understand where the majority of folks in town stand, and then Andrea needs to be sort of equipped and resourced to drive it forward, and I think that would include some funding for a next phase engagement for the consultant, because that's really how from what my experience with the town, that is an effective way to really get from A to Z on something.
So I'll say this, Dan. I agree with you as far as getting it out there. I would argue that the forum is fine, but not the best forum, because it's the same people who, mostly negative people, with all due respect to my town folk, who are going to chime up on the forum, and you're not going to get a lot of positive response. I think if you want to get a balanced comment, I would engage the Citizens Association and let them set up an evening of where it's an open forum where everybody can come, and open mic night, and let them speak like this, where you get I think a more balanced and, quite frankly, an honest assessment. It's it's easy to hide behind emails and stuff, and but it's a lot more challenging when someone has to express itself face to face. So, or I do both. I'm just saying. I mean,
that's great. I love that idea.
I think that's a good idea. The other thing you might want to do, if you haven't thought of this, is a survey, a quick, yes or no, or on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, just like 5 questions or something, just to try to delineate some of the aspects. For it also heightens what is to be considered. What are the options? And it gets it right there on a page.
So do I just talk? Do I connect sort of offline with Phil and Andrea, and then we put our heads together and just take those steps, or is everybody okay if we do that?
Yes, and you can reach out to Lisa Bones. She's the president. I mean, go ahead. Go forth. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
Certainly. Thank you.
Okay, if we can move on, I'll just say for Steve Messick, who is not here tonight, he wanted everybody to know that he is looking at February 25th as one of the possible dates to have a town public meeting to discuss renovation options on the town hall. So to pencil that in, and he just said there might be some other dates, but I'm not sure if the 25th is a definitive date or not, but the one shooting for. Okay. 9:15. Andrea, can you give an update quick on the report?
Yes. So monthly managers report for.
I'm sorry. Pardon me. I forgot. I told Stephen I would make this announcement as well. Stephen has volunteered to be the point of contact and council liaison for Thrive Montgomery 50. And that has to do with the missing middle of multi-pricing point housing. That's what they call it now. And there's a lot going on there about a current zoning amendment being considered by the county council as to whether to establish any neighborhoods within a mile of the metro or the MARC train to create available housing. We do not know if this includes incorporated towns. That's a question that's out there. But the planning board of the county recommended to table that. But it's still up to the county council to decide. And they're going to be having a hearing on the Thrive Montgomery 50 initiative, which deals with a lot of things, and hence why Stephen is good for this, and he's volunteered to step up, and he'll be sort of the point of contact and stuff. So that's where we are. Okay, sorry, Andrea. Thank you.
Okay. For the monthly manager's report, the January revenues, operations, and capital budgets were at expected levels. Total revenues and expenses were within projections. Obviously, for some of the ones that were off a little, we talked about those with the mid-year budget adjustment. But overall, they're within projections. There were not any new building permits that were issued. As far as town office and maintenance highlights, I won't read everything verbatim here, but the main items of interest are probably that there is the RFP on the website for the Porcupine Woods restoration, and that we're getting new Garrett Park signs that'll be up soon in town. And I'm going to amend my own manager notes, thanks to a resident who caught this, that I'm going to amend this to say the new Garrett Park signs that will replace the signs at Cambria Park and on the east and west sides of Knowles and Strathmore Avenue, respectively, are nearly complete. So those should be up pretty soon. The only other item that I'll mention is that the budget retreat has come up. So just wanting to sort of gauge if you all would like to do that again this year. And if you do, then March would be the time to do that, because we would have an April introduction for the budget and a May adoption. No. Shaking your head no.
The May council meeting is after the election. What we try to do is have the introduction in March, the adoption in April. So
okay, it'd be an interesting month.
But you know what? I defer to everybody.
I mean, last year we did adopt in May, but I understand it was weird. Right. It was a weird year last year. So
right, and what happens is you get, well, maybe we won't have any new council members this time around, but it involved others that speak or they don't really know to make the vote. So that's what we always do, try to shoot for April adoption. Defer to you guys though. Go for it.
So either way, we would either, if we're going to have a March introduction, we'd want to have a discussion between now and the March meeting. And if we want to have a April introduction, then we'd still want to, if we're going to do a budget retreat, we'd still want to talk sometime in March, but it wouldn't have to be before March 8th. It could be later in March.
Andrea, could you maybe send us some options of dates for that next meeting?
Yeah.
Along with the timeline outlined?
Maybe a good question to ask would be, are there any time periods that you know are bad to avoid? Maybe work's crazy that week, or I know we're not really traveling a lot of places, but maybe somebody's traveling or somebody's coming in town, or if anybody has times to avoid, you can just email them to me too, if you have times that you know to avoid. And then I'll send around a meeting invite, like a doodle or whatever, or get Joanne to help.
Yeah, it would certainly give you more time, wouldn't it, Andrea, if we did this retreat or working group session in March for an April introduction, because it is really, really busy.
Yeah.
So I just put that out there for everybody's awareness. Just how.
I know the last week of March is the kids' spring break from school, I think, if at least public school, if that hasn't changed. So
okay.
Might be good to avoid that week.
Okay.
All right. Is that it, Andrea?
Yep, that's it for me.
Okay, without further ado, we are going to...
Hang on. I did,
Oh.
sorry, I was raising my hand. I just
see
had a
it.
question. Sorry, Kaki. Andrew, I was just wondering if the town could maybe increase communications about shoveling the sidewalks adjacent to properties, because a lot of the sidewalks are now new. So I just think that there's a lack of familiarity with the expectations to shovel the sidewalks, and there have been a lot of unsafe conditions on the days that we've had snow and ice. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
And can we give a warm welcome back to Andrea? I don't know, maybe that occurred earlier, but like,
It did.
Thank you.
But yay, we'll do it again.
Thank you. Thank you.
We missed you a lot. Welcome
Great to be
back.
back. Thank you. Thank you. It was busy. Not only did I have a baby, but we also were able to adopt she was our foster daughter. Now she's our daughter. So it's exciting.
Congratulations.
We gained 2 children.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
impressed that I only heard dog barking in the background.
Oh, that's not, I'm in my basement. Their room is, the girls are up there.
All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. It's 9:22. The meeting is adjourned.